I I grew up. We were skint basically, as a lot of people were after the war, and I got this idea eventually when I was a young kid that I wanted to be a footballer, and a series of kind of extraordinary coincidences happened to uh, put me on that road. I remember one time I was having a trial for the city team in city schoolboys team in Leicester, and I was sent by my teacher to play outfield because he didn't think I would get in the team as a goalkeeper because they had a very good goalkeeper already, and I didn't do very well. And after about half an hour, I was told, go and kick a ball with these guys over there, these lads over there, and we'll call you if we want you. And it never, it was never going to happen. And then after a few minutes, I heard the teacher shout over, "Any of you lads playing goal?" And one of the other goalkeepers, there was two goalkeepers, had got injured. And so I was away quick and took his place. Did all right. Went to the next trial, and of all the games I've played in my life, this was the one. The teams in the second trial were very kind of ill matched. I was in the poorest team by a long way, and the shots were coming in from all angles. And if I'd have dived the wrong way, it would have hit my foot and gone over. I just couldn't stop stopping everything. And the guy said, well, the teacher manager said, well, I thought we were going to have this other guy in goal, but I can't not pick you after this performance. And from that moment, the club started to watch the games. I played for the Leicester boys team, and I eventually became a professional footballer about 2 years later, which would never have happened. I can't see how it would have happened looking back, if that kid had not got injured in that first trial. And I've had a lot of synchronicity, coincidences like that in my life, one after the other, actually, when I have thought about it. And, there came a time after I'd, first of all, been a footballer, and I've finished with football at the age of just 21 with rheumatoid arthritis that finished my career as a professional footballer for about 5 years. And then I went into journalism. And of course, I'd left school at 15 which you could in those days, to be a footballer. I hadn't taken a major exam in my life. And when I wanted to go into journalism, which was always my second interest, they were asking what degrees I had at the university. And of course, I played briefly for Oxford United once, and that was as near to university as I ever got. And again, a series of coincidences and, quote, lucky breaks got me into journalism when normally someone like me would never get in. And the funny thing is, the ludicrous thing is that once I'd got on my first paper, which was just about read by the people that wrote it, it was a tiny little newspaper. No one ever asked me again in my entire media career what kind of school, university qualifications I had. It was kind of crazy, really, that so much importance is to get in or put on it to get in, and then they don't ask you anymore. And eventually I moved up into radio and then into television with the BBC, and I became a national television sport broadcaster. I was in news most of the time, but then I went into sport. And then when I was, what would I be? It would be, well, 1989. Some very extraordinary things started to happen, because by this time I'd joined the Green Party in Britain. And I became a national spokesman for the Green Party in a matter of a few weeks. I mean, that was just extraordinary, but it was something that has happened to me so many times, to get me into certain places quickly and positions quickly. So I joined the Green Party as just a member, and I asked the party headquarters, "Have you got a Green Party in my area?" And they said, "No. Why don't you start one?" So I did. This was in the days when the Green Party was talking about pollution and deforestation. It wasn't talking about this hoax of human-caused climate change as they do today, where it's everything. And I I started a party, and then after about 2 weeks, we got this letter saying, uh, "We see you're a new party in our area. Well, we're having a meeting in a place called Winchester for the southern region of the Green Party. Could you send somebody?" So I went along, and this is only about 2 weeks after I started the party, a matter of just a few weeks after I joined it. And at the end of the meeting, the lady said, "Our representative on National Party Council is stepping down. Can we have nominations to replace them?" And nobody put their name forward. So I said, "Well, I'll do it if no one else will do it." And I got voted in because there was no one else. And so about 2 weeks after that, I end up at National Party Council. I've only been in the bloody party a few weeks. And I'm listening and navel contemplating at a higher level. And the guy said just before lunch, "We need some party speakers for the next year, like spokesmen and spokeswomen. And could we have nominations in the afternoon?" And this guy came up to me over lunch and said, "You're on the telly, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You'd be confident in front of a camera, would you?" I said, "Well, yeah, it would be." He said, "Well, if you put your name forward, I'll second you as a party speaker." And by the end of the afternoon, I'm a national spokesman for the British Green Party that I'd only joined a few weeks before. And as again, the coincidences were kind of unbelievable. The Green Party in those days used to have a man and a dog turn up from the media for their national party conference. And then in the year after I became spokesman, nothing to do with me, by the way, there was a tremendous amount of stuff in the mainstream media about the environment and pollution and all that stuff. And in the, what was it, 1987, something like that, 1987, 1988, maybe 89, there was a European election for the European Parliament. And suddenly the Green Party got this massive bloody vote. And it was a kind of a protest vote, but it was a massive vote like never before. And I found myself now on television as a national spokesman for the Green Party. And it was just ridiculous. And it was at that point I thought, this don't seem right, because every time I've gone for something, like when my football career ended, of course, I'm devastated at 21 just, what I wanted to do all my life and gone. I decided I wanted to be a BBC sports presenter. And that was kind of so far out, because there's so few people that actually get that job, that it was ridiculous, but it happened. And then I joined the Green Party, and suddenly I'm a national spokesman. And I started to think, there's more to this than meets the eye, but I've no idea what it is. And then I went through in 1990 an extraordinary sequence of events whereby through 1989, I was, I had this feeling that when I was in a room alone, I wasn't alone. It was very, very strange feeling. And this became more and more tangible during 1989, to the point where in early 1990, I'd been working for the BBC, and I went back to a hotel room called the Kensington Hilton, just down from the BBC in London. And it was so tangible, this presence in the room, that I sat on the side of the bed and I said into the room, look, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall. And then literally days later, a sequence of events unfolded that led me to a book. And I turned the book over, read the blurb, and it was by a psychic, a professional psychic who lived just down the coast from me in England. And I thought immediately when I saw this, because I'd never been involved in any of this stuff before, I wonder if this woman could pick up what's been happening to me for the last year, where I've had this feeling of a presence. So I go to see her, and she knows me from the telly, but she doesn't know anything about what's been happening to me. And I made sure I didn't tell her, because I don't want to, put things into her mind. She just repeats back to me. And then I went a couple of visits and we had a chat. And what I said to her was, I've got this arthritis. Maybe your kind of hands-on type healing could help my arthritis. And so that's what I actually went for, as she thought. And I said nothing about anything else that had been going on. And virtually no one knew about that anyway. And then on the third visit, I went there 4 times. She goes into psychic mode, because what had happened is that I'd read in her book that when other dimensions of reality are trying to lock into you, it sometimes feels like you've got a spider's web on your face, because this is the electromagnetic connection that is made. And I'm sitting in her front room in 1990 while she's doing the hands-on healing on my left knee. And I felt like a spider's web on my face. And immediately I thought, oh, I read that in her book. And I didn't say anything to her. I was just thinking, what's going on? And I don't know, 15 seconds later, maybe, she launches her head back and says, I've got to close my eyes for this one. This is powerful. At which point my backside is now slipping down the bench, because I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm in new territory here. And I'm just about to get on a train to do a program in London. It's like it wasn't out of my comfort zone, but it was out of my zone of experience. And then she starts to tell me that I'm going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, that I would face enormous opposition, but, quote, they would always be there to protect me. And that there was a massive story to be told about basically human control. And I was going to tell it, which sounded absolutely ludicrous at the time, because I'm a sports presenter with the BBC. What are you talking about? But a sequence of events that followed, nothing to do with that, because no one knew about that, just me and her, my family. A series of events happened that made me leave the BBC and go on this journey, which I'm still on, 36 years now, of revealing these secrets. And the synchronicity of my life, where information comes to me in this almost coordinated way, has gone on ever since. And that's where all the books have come from. And I'm still going.
Yeah, you've lived an amazing life, and your football career, not to talk about it again, because obviously there's lots of other things, but you were scouted by Coventry City, which is uh, us Portuguese fans know them from Golcarez, who just came from there, came to Sporting Lisbon, and is killing it. And they've always had great players, so it's a big club. They obviously only scout the best of the best. You were in, I believe, the runners up to Burley in the FA Cup, which is one of the oldest, I think, the oldest football tournament in all of Europe. And so you've done some, even in the short little time you spent in football, you did some amazing things.
Yeah, well, Coventry City was fantastic. I could have gone to a number of clubs when I was 15, but I chose Coventry City, who had just moved into the top division. They're in the second division now, the Championship they call it, but in Britain. But they were just going up into the top division, what they now call the Premiership. And of all the times in my life, there were more characters at Coventry City at that time in the first team and what have you than any group of people I've ever come across, and it was a real joy. And my football career was in many ways part of what's happened since, because it triggered in me a fierce determination not to go under. And I'll tell you why. I joined Coventry City from school when I was 15 in 1967. And 6 months later, maybe a bit more, but not much, I got an injury, and my left knee swelled up for no reason. And I had tests and treatment, and nothing would shift it. And it's still swollen now. Don't trouble me, but it's swollen now. And so I stopped playing for quite a few months. And in the end, the club doctor said, well, we can't find any reason for it, and you're not in pain, so you might as well play on and see what happens. And I played on, and I had a very, very successful career at Coventry City. We got to the final of the FA Youth Cup, which is the youth competition, played all over the country, not just by professional clubs, but non-professional clubs as well. And we got to the final against Tottenham. And I played against people like Graham Souness, who became a very famous player, and Steve Perryman, who became a very famous player with Tottenham. The captain of our team was a guy called Dennis Mortimer, who went on to be the captain of Aston Villa when they won the European Cup. So, and we had a tremendous team, and we played 4 games in the final before we got a result. It should have been a 2-leg game or final, and it took 4 games to sort us out. And even then, it was only 1 goal that made the difference. And the following season, my right knee started to go, and my right ankle started to go, and they were painful, and it became more and more difficult to play. And I saw again the club doctor, who advised me not to play again because I could be in real trouble if I did. But I didn't know anything else at the time. And I got contacted by a very famous former footballer called John Charles, who was a famous Welsh footballer who played for Juventus in Italy, and he was a really great player. And he was manager of a little club called Hereford United. And he contacted me and he said, well, why don't you come and play for us? We only played, a couple of times a week, and we only train like once or twice a week. So you might get away with it. And so I went there, and very, very soon they got in the Football League, and I was a goalkeeper for a Football League team at 1920, which was a really young in those days to be in that position. But the arthritis was still there. And I remember playing my last season in what is now League Two in Britain, and we won promotion in the first season in the league to the one above. But every morning when I was warming up, and we used to train, by the way, at Credon Hill near Hereford, which is the home of the SAS, the elite regiment of the British Army. You imagine they'd allow you to do that today. But we used to go in there and train. They had great sports facilities. And every morning, I was in agony during the warm-up, every single morning. And I knew when I woke up every morning that in an hour or a couple of hours, I was going to be in agony for at least half an hour. And then the joints would warm up and it would be okay. And I'd do the rest of the training session. And I used to be the club hypochondriac because I used to have to find excuses for what was the same thing. So I'd have a bit of a polo. I think I've got a bit of a blister when I'm kind of limping a bit in the warm up. And that triggers something in you because you need a level of determination to face that every morning just to keep going as a professional footballer. And we were very successful. And I tell you, the very strange thing was when I played the games, it was fine. It was training that was and warm-ups that was the problem. So we won promotion, and I'm now just 21, and things are going well, really, in terms of success. And then during the close season, before the start of the next one, I'm lying in bed one morning, and as I woke up through that half sleep, I realized I couldn't move anything. I couldn't move any joint, and I couldn't breathe. And I thought I was going to die because I couldn't breathe. It couldn't have been for long, but it seemed a long time. I'm trying to gasp a breath. My wife then, Linda, was beside me, and I'm trying to knock her to wake her up. Couldn't move a thing. And suddenly I gasped a breath. And when I did so, every joint in my body was like someone was sticking a knife in it. It was unbelievable. So I went to bed, a professional footballer, and I woke up never to play again. And at that time, people talk about footballers today and all the money they get. My basic wage at Hereford United in the Football League was £30 a week. So you suddenly had to find another income very, very quickly. And that was journalism, which again is a series of stories that got me in there, which was kind of extraordinary. So when I look back at my life, everything I needed when I started on this journey of uncovering this stuff, like I say, I'm in my 36th year, was given to me. I had fierce determination, which had been triggered by the what I've just been talking about, among other things. I had experience in journalism, in print journalism, in radio journalism, in television journalism. I'd learned how to write simply, because that's what you have to do if you're writing for a newspaper, because you've got to justify the amount of the paper you're taking up. And I had everything that I needed, and off we went. And like I say, for all these years since 1990, information's just come to me and come to me and come to me, and still is. And what it's done is drive me deeper and deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. So, what I see with the alternative media, not all of it, there's some fantastic people in the alternative media, I'm talking about the central core that's basically, I would say, hijacked it since the COVID hoax. Many of them came out of the mainstream who bought the COVID hoax, ironically. They kind of go so far and then stop. It's like, okay, it's the conspiracy is political and economic. Well, yes, it is, but only on one level. And it's a very small level of actually what's going on. And I've always worked on the premise that whatever I know or think I know, there's always more to know. When you start to uncover the scale of knowledge and information oppression about the great swathe of subjects we need to understand if we're going to get a grasp on what's actually happening. The idea that you've got it, when people say, oh, I get it now, I'm awake. No, none of us is awake. We're awakening, and we're seeking more and more knowledge in the awareness that whatever we know, there's always more to know. And if you once reach that point where, oh, I've got it now, I can see what's going on. Well, you might see what's going on at one level, but this is a massive story. And every time I think, maybe I'm reaching the bottom of the rabbit hole, then it opens up again and you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And so over 36 years now, I've accumulated an enormous amount of information because of this synchronicity. When I see all the books I've written and how big some of them are, there's no way that I could have done that without this synchronicity of information. It would have taken too long.
Well, the amazing thing is so many things you discussed years ago that people kind of laughed at and didn't, it seemed supernatural. It seemed like everything about our limits with our senses, everything in regards to other dimensions, all these things. I remember years ago having Rupert Sheldrake on the show and, talking about his studies, and people kind of laughed at that. And now, little by little, it's like things are uncovering, and people like yourself are go from being like laughed at to now being listened to. And how has it been seeing that all unfold?
Well, you learn a lot about human programming, because when you've got 8 billion people and the number that are in full knowledge pushing the world in this direction of global dystopia, then it's obvious that the foundation of the control and the methodology of control is control of perception. Because yes, you can put the troops out and control people in a small area, yeah. And where they want to go, of course, is connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence, so that the artificial intelligence is doing our thinking and our emotional reactions. And then they really got you. But in the meantime, up to this point, they have to control perception, because from perception comes behavior. We behave as we do because we believe what we do. People in vast numbers went meekly under lockdown, fascism during COVID, because of what they perceived was the situation. It's the cause and effect of perception and behavior is not only blatant, it's constant. And so you see, when you're putting stuff out that is out of the box, you see how the perceptual programming is so fierce, because people will dismiss it. Like I've done 36 years in coming up now of research into this, and you have people dismissing you with a wave of their hand, who haven't done 36 seconds of research into the subjects you're talking about. The thing is, it's outside of their belief system, so therefore it can't be true. It's a reflex action dismissal. It's extraordinary to watch. And it teaches you so much about actually how easy it is for the few to control the world. Because if you stop people in the street anywhere in the world and ask them about a major event, they'll almost certainly give you in the past or whatever, or even what's happening, they'll almost certainly give you the official version of the story, and they'll think it's their opinion. But it's not. They're just repeating what they've been told is the situation and why something's happened. And so this is something that is so fundamental to human control, where people will dismiss what someone says, no matter what the evidence, because they won't look at the evidence. It's just outside of their belief system, and therefore it can't be true by definition. I mean, people say to me, oh, you say that there is a non-human kind of element to human control. Yeah. And that we're living in some kind of simulated reality. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's bloody nonsense, isn't it? And then you'll say, well, what research have you done into the subject? And what will come back, if they're being honest, is zero. And, if we're going to just become prisons of the mind that take on a belief system and then repel all borders, then we're not going to get anywhere. If you look at the human race in general, it is a series, not in every case, of course not, but in vast, vast swathes of the human race, they are controlled by a belief system. Now, that belief system may be Christianity, it may be Judaism, it may be Islam, it may be Hinduism, it may be right-wing politics, it may be left-wing politics. And what happens when you take on a belief system that repels all borders? I got it now. I got it. This is the truth. Then what that does is firewall you off from this vast, vast area of potential knowledge, potential insight, potential understanding, because they're outside your belief system. So I've had people say to me in America, going way back, I like what you're saying about the conspiracy and stuff, and I agree with a lot of it, but I can't take you seriously because you don't believe in Jesus. Now, people want to believe in Jesus, but that's not the arbiter of whether you've got something relevant to say or not. And if you look at religion, take religion, and religion is something that people look at and they think, okay, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, well, yeah, but the mentality of religion is far greater than that. Human-caused climate change is a religion. Orthodox science is a religion, and they all operate the same way as a religion. So you'll get people in orthodox science who will dismiss the so-called paranormal. It's not para at all, if you get deeper into how reality works, simply because it's outside of the paradigm, the limit, the tram lines of what orthodox science says is how things are. You talk about Sheldrake. He's come across exactly that, and he talks about this mentality very well. And so this religious mentality is what holds people in this perceptual servitude, because the global cult, as I call it, this global network of secret societies that's actually driving the direction of human society on behalf of other dimensional forces, by the way, they don't care what you believe, so long as you believe it rigidly and without question, because then they gotcha. Whatever your belief system is, that's your prison cell. And you're going to not go anywhere else that's outside the prison cell. And what I've done, well, all my life, really, if I look back, but certainly since 1990, is I've said, I'm going to let the information be my guide, and I'm going to make my decisions on what I feel as the situation, not based on preconceived idea or belief, but on evidence. You know, when you look at the evidence, even in the Bible, not least the Old Testament, that what is perceived as God is actually multiple gods. It's blatant. I've just been reading some stuff from various people, a number of series of books, including people who used to translate Bibles for the Vatican with Vatican approval. And they realized that actually, when you go back to the original, as opposed to the translated, the God of the Old Testament is actually gods. Plural, Elohim, it's a plural word. And then when you take it, and I've been doing this now for bloody decades, when you then take it into the ancient world of Mesopotamia, the Sumer, Babylon, Assyria, Acadia, Egypt, and all these places, they were all multi-god religions. You know, and then we've got from which the singular religious God came. And then you look at Islam, and Allah is actually a moon god, which you can trace back very simply, very easily to Mesopotamia again, a moon god called Sin. And you know, it's like, what has happened? And you know, I'm not speaking as an atheist. You know, I believe in a greater power, but it just takes a different form to how religion presents it. But it's like none of this exploration is available to people with a rigid repel all borders belief, because they won't go there. They will dismiss it by reflex action. And I've seen this all the way through my life, and or through my life since 1990. And what's happened more recently is that events have started to challenge that rigidity. And some people have doubled down. So much of the central core of the alternative media has become more Christianized, not less. Or many other people have gone, well, maybe I'm going to have a look at this. And when they do, they see actually that the evidence is there to at least consider other possibilities.
Well, when you look at like the telepathy tapes and the fact that now they have like professionals and scientists showing that there's some type of way of communicating and sharing information, and now older research like the water experiments and the fact that there could be memory in all human life and all living life, memories and something more than just the material world. And it's obvious that like you were talking about scientism, right? Their religion, that they want you to believe in just the material world. Anything that science can't explain doesn't exist. And it suppresses our, it's like you said, people explore, but they explore with restrictions. They restrict anything that gets out of their culture, their worldview, and they don't want to believe those things. But I feel like those walls are coming down, and people are now, even with the, I don't know your opinions on like the ETs and all this stuff, but like people who are saying when they have these contact that they're getting, they're having communications with ETs using, it's like mental, not verbal, right? And all these things that are kind of like basically defending what things you've been saying and what Nikola Tesla said years ago, that if you want to understand the universe, you have to understand frequency, energy, and vibration, that there's all these things out there. There's more than meets the eye, and our five senses are restricting us from seeing those things. And do you think that when it comes down to, science, maybe even, I wonder if, because something I like to do and something you've been doing your whole life and you're very good at is connecting those dots. I'm curious on your thoughts on like, these secret societies, ancient civilization stuff that Graham Hancock talks about, if this information's out there and they're just suppressing it.
Yeah, and the best way to suppress something is to ridicule it, because then people won't look at it. But if they do, like I say, they realize, whoa, I didn't realize there was this much evidence. So let's look at the material world for a start. People have no idea how little, how small, how tiny the material world actually is. I mean, we live in a material world. Oh, really? Okay. So I'm looking now and I can see a couple of lights. I can see a computer. I can see a window. I can see some trees. And that's form. That's matter. And what is matter? It is, as Einstein put it, it is simply energy that has been condensed to a slow enough vibration for us to see it. Which brings me to the next point, which might elicit a bit of humility from people if they take it on. That this is something that should be taught to every child at the earliest possible moment that they can grasp it. And that is that the band of frequency that we call sight is so tiny, it's almost laughable. Visible light, the scientists call it, and it's tiny. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is about 0.005% of what exists in terms of energy in all its forms in the universe. Visible light, which is all that we can see, everything you're looking at now is within the band of that visible light frequency, because that's all this body will decode. And that's not an accident either, not a story. And therefore, humans are basically blind. You say to people, when you look into the space in front of you, can you see everything that's happening in that space? And people will say, yes, most of them. But they can't. They're only seeing what's happening within a tiny band of frequency. And so you have the analog radio and television stations that shared the same space, but they were on different wavelengths. And so you tuned a radio, say, to a wavelength, and that's the radio station you got. That's what this does. That this is a biological computer. And then when you move the dial to another radio station, you get another radio station. But the radio station you've just turned off or from hasn't ceased to exist because you've gone to another station. It still exists. It's still broadcasting. But your technology, if you like, is no longer tuned to it. So you're not aware of it. And so in the space that I'm sitting in now and you're sitting in and everybody's sitting in is infinite reality. But apart from a tiny, tiny, tiny smear called visible light, we're not aware of that. And people say to me, well, if there's all these aliens, why can't we see them? Well, mate, you can hardly see anything. And people say, "Whoa, I saw this UFO, or I saw this extraterrestrial, and they appeared out of nowhere in the room, and then they just disappeared." And immediately the reaction is, "You're mad, mate. What were you drinking?" But it's so easy to explain once you open this. The observer, the human observer, is observing through visible light. Something's happening outside of visible light. They're not seeing it. They might be energetically aware of it. You know, when you go into a house and you go, "Don't like it in here," you might feel it, but you're not seeing it. And some people see ghosts, but and this is why some people see ghosts and some people standing next to them don't see them, because of what they can tune into and what they can't. So if you're observing visible light, soon as something comes into visible light, be a UFO or an entity, to you, the observer, it's appeared out of nowhere. And when it leaves visible light, to you, the observer, it's disappeared into nowhere. But it hasn't and disappeared at all. It's left the frequency that you can see. And this is suppressed, and orthodox science gets the funding to be orthodox, because this is the information that we need to know that will set us free by understanding the game that we're involved in and the power we actually have to play it better than the controllers do. And so in terms of extraterrestrials, I call them interdimensionals because they operate overwhelmingly in another dimension called the astral, and they come in and out. This is when people see them suddenly and then they disappear. The Old Testament texts describe them. You know, when God, the Elohim, plural, translated as God, singular, when that Elohim talk about let us go and make man in our image, and use the us word many times, it's obviously not a single entity, is it? And the more that you get into this, and the more that you see the mistranslations, many of them on purpose, of plural to singular, and then you see descriptions which are blatantly describing advanced technology. Then you go to the Vedas in India, going back to the ancient Sanskrit language. Enormous numbers have not even yet been translated, but those who have, they tell the same story. You know, the extraterrestrials were around, and they were. This is how they built the bloody pyramids. This is how they built incredible structures I've seen in Peru. Vast stones of enormous weight that are put together in a wall just outside Cuzco. I've seen it, where they're all different shapes, but they're fitted together. You can't hardly get a piece of paper through them in the gaps. How did anyone do that? How did they, as they've now established, how did one of the major stones of Stonehenge originate in Scotland? How did it get in here? To Wiltshire in England in those days. And then you look at all the ancient accounts all over the world. Mesopotamia, Central America, North America with the Native Americans, the Aboriginals in Australia, the Zulus in South Africa. I've talked to all of them and read their stuff. And they're using different names for the same entities. You know, in Sumer, in Mesopotamia, what we now call Iraq, these ancient Sumerian tablets, going back thousands of years, we're talking about a non-human race called the Anunnaki arriving and taking over, basically. And they mention that they were led by two brothers called Enlil and Enki. And then I talked to the great Zulu shaman, sadly no longer with us, Credo Mutwa in South Africa, who I spent days and days talking to over the years. And he tells me the Zulu legend of two brothers called, in their language, Wawani and Umpanku. And the stories of those two are mirrors of the Sumerian stories from Mesopotamia. And then you look at texts that have been found from Central America and the Mayans, and they tell the same story. There was once a global society, and its advancement and these incredible buildings that basically couldn't be built today were built through extraterrestrial advanced technology. And then, for whatever reason, they disappeared. And I tell you what's interesting. I'm just putting together another book at the moment, which is including all this stuff and a hell of a lot more. I'm just coming towards the end of it now. But you know, there are texts in from Central America, for instance, that describe how this non-human race with advanced technology, how they manipulated humans genetically, and how at one point the gods, as they are perceived by many, thought that humans were being allowed to become too intelligent. In other words, the way the body worked and the way the brain worked was allowing awareness to get out of hand, because what they wanted us to be was slaves. All these stories talk about that's what they came to Earth for humans to be, slaves to them. And these texts talk about the fact that the way they dealt with it was to in the language of the Central America of the time, they basically put a cloud over the eyes of humans so they could only see what was in front of them, but couldn't see the panorama. And that is why the human body, I suggest, can only decode this ridiculously narrow band of frequency we call visible light. Because the more expanded your visual acuity, you're starting to move into those frequency realms where these entities exist. So you can see them. But if you can squeeze visible light, they can operate in the same space you're operating in, but you can't see them. And they've gone from manipulating openly to manipulating from backstage. And this global cult, as I call it, this global network of secret societies, it represents the interests and ambitions of these entities. And when people are, they're talking about these satanic rituals, when they're doing these rituals to the gods, well, look back and see how these rituals were being done openly all over the world at one time. Then look at the pantheons of gods all over the world. We talk about the Greek pantheon with Zeus and all the rest of it. We talk about the Roman pantheon. But almost every part of the world, if not every part of the world, had a pantheon of gods, plural. these were the extraterrestrials. And they're still manipulating, but now through this global cult. And this is why when I was putting this cult together in terms of uncovering it in the early 1990s, I started to realize that these key players were taking part in satanic ritual. And you go, why? Why would they do that? And then you look at back in the day, the ancients were doing these rituals openly, making offerings to the gods, sacrifice. But there came a point where humans had reached a level of awareness and decency where that wasn't acceptable anymore to most people. So it went underground, and it's still underground now. And these people running politics, whether it's the Trump administration or the Biden administration, it don't matter. It's a one-party state. They're answerable to these non-human gods via this network, this cult network. And people like the Rothschilds, they are completely and utterly aware of all this, and that level of the cult. And so there's so much that's happening that is not talked about or is dismissed by reflex action, that we need to understand to get a grasp, a grip on actually what we're facing and why things are happening. And so once you put this together, you start to realize what AI is really all about. The foundation of the control of humanity, the perceptual control for a start, is to keep people's attention focused on basically the five sense world, because that's the material world, if you like. Keep them focused. Okay, you can, they can believe that if they believe in Jesus, they'll go to heaven with their soul. Okay, that's fine, but not a problem. But don't let them realize that actually what they are is potentially an infinite expansion of consciousness with extraordinary feats that we're capable of, if only we realized it. But if we were at that level of awareness and that level of potentiality, we couldn't be controlled by a tiny few people. So we must be kept in the box. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that you see in these ancient texts is how these gods that have morphed into a god, how they put inhibitors in the brain so that you couldn't. It's like in China, where great swathes of the internet are firewalled off. So if you're on a Chinese computer, you can't get into those areas because the system won't allow it. It's a similar principle. And then you look at this phenomenon called savants. And savants can manifest often through autism, but also it's happened when people have had a serious bang on the head, or when they've had a central nervous system defect. Suddenly, they can do things that are just out of this world. So there's one called Stephen Wiltshire in Britain. You might have heard of him. He's an artist. And he realized that he had this gift for what they've done with him many, many times is they've put him in a helicopter. They've flown him once over Rome or over Paris, And he's come down and he's drawn accurately what he saw from the sky. There's another savant I read about, who was given the task to learn fluent Icelandic in a week. He did it. So whether it's a bang on the head that frees the inhibitor or unblocks the inhibitor or whatever, our potential for feats of awareness and creation are phenomenal compared with what they're allowed to be. And if we just focus on the political level and the financial level of all this, then we are denying ourselves the real levels of the conspiracy, the control system, what the political world and the financial world and all that stuff is to this conspiracy is just one way it plays out. It's one way the control plays out, a very major way, but one way. The real conspiracy is the fact that the very nature of the reality we're experiencing is nothing like what we think we're experiencing. And therefore, we're basically experiencing the enormously advanced equivalent of a virtual reality computer game. And that is the foundation of the control of human perception, which leads to human behavior. So if you think of the human body as a headset in a virtual reality game, which is constantly decoding this simulated reality that has been created by these entities, a bit like a Wi-Fi field of information, and this, the biological computer, is interacting with that field, and we are decoding it into the experience we think we're having, which we think is outside of us. Grant you, that's how we experience it. But actually, it's all going on in here. And again, this is why, and science will agree with this, that we are, through the five senses, we are picking up frequency information. That's the simulation field of information. The senses turn that information into electrical information. They communicate it to the brain, and the brain then decodes that into holographic digital information. Science may not agree with that, but that's how it works. I'm going to show you after decades of researching this. And therefore, if I'm looking at my computer now and I'm seeing the internet, where is it? Where is the internet? It's not over there. It's not over there. It's inside the computer. I'm just viewing the computer on the screen, but everything's going on inside the computer. The internet exists inside of the computer as it's decoded. Exactly the same with this. And therefore, we're experiencing a reality which appears to be external to us and appears to be solid. Quantum physics has clearly obliterated that myth. And so we're experiencing something that's not anything like what we think we're experiencing. And, you know, Trump or Biden sort of takes very low priority in terms of the foundation of the conspiracy when you realize that even the very reality we're experiencing is the foundation of the conspiracy. And it's this knowledge of the nature of reality we're experiencing and our ability to impact upon it that they want to keep from us. And they do it by getting the target population to laugh at the information that has the potential to set them free.
They're not laughing too much anymore. I mean, people are now talking about your work. People like Alex Jones, others who have been laughed at for many years. James Corbett, others who now are they're guests on shows as experts in geopolitical stuff and in historical events and whatnot. So I think the tides are turning. It's funny because when you look at a blind person paying more attention to their hearing, or a deaf person paying more attention to their vision, being able to pick up on things, when you look at like a lot of these telepathy tape studies, it's nonverbal autistic people. And years ago, I had the professor of psychology from Notre Dame on the show, and she talked about how when babies are born, they actually pick up on more social cues than adults because they don't have the verbal skills to communicate, so they have to rely on other skills. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the telepathy tapes and like the nonverbal, and so I was curious, like, okay, maybe some of this reason why these kids can do these things is because they don't have mechanical and verbal skills, so they're tapping into other abilities that maybe we might all have, but like you said, either it has been suppressed, or or maybe we're not being taught, or because we're not believers, we live in the material world, we don't even know that these abilities exist.
Well, a massive common theme of extraterrestrial communication and communication with humans, between humans and extraterrestrials, both modern and ancient, is that it was done through telepathy, which is basically you project a thought, which is a field of information, and the person then decodes that thought. Now, so it's a frequency communication. Now think about language. People say, "Oh, that's far out." That is okay. Well, let's have a look at it. When I'm speaking now, what I'm projecting is frequencies generated by my vocal cords. And they pass through what we call space, and the ears pick up those frequencies. They then turn them into electrical information and communicate them to the brain. And the brain then decodes them into the language that we learn. We teach the brain to decode through trials and repetition. So we're communicating through frequency all the time. It's called talking. And all that telepathy is doing is communicating through frequency in another way without the intervention of the vocal cords. And so much communication, even now, takes place non-verbally, as you rightly point out. You're having a conversation with someone, but the non-verbal stuff is communicating at the same time. This is why you can meet someone and they're all very friendly. Oh, hello, nice to meet you. But there's just something about them. Something about that guy. I don't like it. Don't like him. Don't know why. Because of the vibes he's giving off. Because you can have all the bon on me. I mean, for a while, it was only for a while, Tony Blair was very good at this, the bon on me and their smile and, oh, good old Tony. But when you pick up the energy coming off Tony Blair, it's horrific. But you can hide it. If you're not sensitive to energy, and we all can be, it's our natural state, then you can be done by the, if you like, the verbal communication and the facial communication. But if you pick up the vibe, you know what Blair is. even though he may be playing a different part to delude you.
Well, it's funny because all these old sayings, we dismiss them as just sayings, but there's truths in all of them. Like you said, the vibes that people give out. We don't, people who are material people use that term all the time and don't realize like there's something there. Like, yeah, you're right. You're admitting that there is something that your five senses isn't picking up, but you can somewhat feel it. That old saying, "Oh, I have a gut feeling." Right now, science has caught up and admitted that the gut and brain is connected and has influences on each other. Yeah, so it's amazing studying old sayings and old beliefs and all these things. Like you can learn so much more about our reality than sometimes modern science.
Well, this is the thing, you see. We're given the impression by orthodox science and anthropology and all this nonsense that they talk, that evolution, as they call it, only goes forward. But what is, quote, evolution based on? In other words, development. It's based on knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the more you can do. The more fantastic the buildings you can build and the things that you can achieve. So what we're saying is knowledge only accumulates. Nonsense. Have you ever been to the pyramids in Cairo?
I have not.
Well, you're in for a shock if you ever do. Because what they do, when they take shots of the pyramids, they always take them in one direction, right? And you see the desert and you go, oh, yes, in the middle of the desert. You turn around and a matter of not many yards away is the sprawl of modern Cairo. And if you look at the pyramids of Egypt and many other fantastic structures like the Valley of the Kings in Luxor, and then you look at modern Egypt, you have no question that knowledge can go up and it can go down. And so in the far ancient world, because we have this idea that evolution, knowledge only goes up, then we must be now at the cutting edge of human potential. That's the way it's presented to us. So any ideas of a vastly advanced technological culture in the ancient world, way before so much has been recorded, is just ridiculous to you. You can't comprehend it. It's not possible. But if you had a very, very high levels of knowledge and technological knowledge and the potentiality of expansions of knowledge, and something happened to take that knowledge away, then you can go backwards very, very quickly. And if you look at this, these legends of the Great Flood, of course, the Noah Great Flood in the Old Testament is a complete plagiarized take from far, far more ancient accounts, like the Sumerian tablets and the Epic of Gilgamesh, and others that describe the flood and how the gods sought to basically dismantle the human world that had been created. And you have the legends, which are like, I think it's about, last time I looked, there's about 2,000 books in print, or certainly have been written, about Atlantis and Lemuria, or Mu in the Pacific, Atlantis in the Atlantic, which were said to be fantastically advanced cultures that fell into the sea. I mean, enormous cataclysms and stuff. And then you start to look at the evidence of coastal waters where phenomenal structures have been found, whether it's in the Pacific or whether it's in the Atlantic and what have you, and off the coast of Bimini and places like that, where these unexplained structures under the water that are phenomenal in scale and kind of mirror what you see with pyramids and what have you around the world. And the Giza pyramids are just one example. I mean, there's pyramids all over the world. I mean, how did they build them all that time ago?
There's some near you in my home country of Portugal, in Torres Islands, the Azores.
And then you've got the increasingly the fact, if you look at the evidence, that there was this amazing global society of tremendous advancement, which came to an end. And they talk about Sumer in what is now Iraq being the cradle of civilization. I don't believe that. I've not believed that since I came across it. It was the re-emergence of what we call civilization after the cataclysms that brought an end to the old one that was far more advanced. And so now suddenly you can start to appreciate how different parts of the world that, according to official science and history, anthropology, they never met in the period we're talking about, but produced the same stories of the gods and the universal story of humanity's history. How they could do that is because there was a global society at one point, which came to an end. And since it came to an end, it would, or at least in the period, at least after that, this non-human force started to go into the shadows and operate from there instead of being open as it was before.
I've had Andrew Collins on, who has done stuff on crop circles and whatnot. I'm curious your thoughts on because obviously there's been some that have been fake, but undeniably there's been some that are unexplained and it gives off energy and whatnot. And I'm curious on like some of the symbolism in the crop circles and also your thoughts, and I know we're already going over time. We're getting as long as a football game at the moment. We're getting to 90 minutes. But the moon, I've always been super curious about the moon. Like, I feel like the information, like most things in our lives, the information we've been given about the moon doesn't make sense. Like, and there's been old civilizations that have talked about a world without the moon or before the moon. I'd be curious on your thoughts about that.
Well, first of all, I've been in many crop circles, and there is an energetic difference between those that have been made by people and those that are so phenomenal in their symbols that how could they be made in a single night? And I've met some of the people that have made them going way back, and there is an energetic difference between the two. But in terms of the moon, I've been writing about this since I think 2010, 2011. There's just, as you say, there's just too many anomalies. And what we really need to do is open our minds to all possibility. It doesn't mean we believe everything, but what we do is we open our minds and give it a chance to make its case. And, when massive impacts have been made over the years, by the NASA organization on the moon, it has produced evidence that it's hollow. And what I do is I'm looking for patterns all the time. I'm looking for patterns of agreement between people, religions, organizations that would normally disagree on a lot. But in this particular area, they agree. I'm looking for those patterns of agreement. And then you put them together. You don't just take one piece of information and think, oh, yeah, this is what's happening then. You're looking for confirmation from many, many different sources, ancient and modern, for instance. And, I've talked to people who have been in the American military and say that they've been to the moon, and that the moon is that what's really going on in the moon is inside, not on the surface. There were some things on the surface, and okay, that's all we can see, but it's inside where it's going on. And when you then look at these impacts on the moon, after they've put sensors up there, the indications are very strongly that the moon is hollow. And then you go back to the legends, and you rightly say there are many legends that the moon has not always been where it was. And back in 1971, I think it was, there were two scientists from the Russian Academy of Sciences who wrote a long article in Sputnik magazine, I remember. And there they were saying that if you look at the anomalies of the moon and the things that can't be explained, you must conclude that it is some kind of gigantic craft. And I go into this in my books. I mean, the anomalies and the coincidences regarding the moon are just ridiculous. And then you go back to Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman who died in his 90s and lived an amazing, phenomenal life, and was the carrier of the knowledge from the ancient accounts of Zulu and African history. And he talked about what I mentioned earlier, these two brothers, as they were portrayed, Umpanko and Wawani, who Wawani mirrors the Enlil character in the Sumer accounts, and Umpanku mirrors the Enki character. Again, two brothers to Zulus, two brothers to the Sumerian accounts. And the Zulu legends say that Wawani and Umpanku brought the moon. And, if you bring the moon into its current position, from an energetic impact point of view, it's going to create frickin' mayhem in the solar system. And, it's one of the biggest moons it's 2,160 or something like that miles in diameter. And it should never, ever be circulating a planet as small as Earth. It shouldn't. Ridiculous, but it does. And like I say, there's many other or stream of anomalies that don't make sense. But if you go with the Russian scientists that it's some kind of construct, some kind of craft, then those anomalies start to disappear fast. And the impact on the Earth of the moon where it is tremendous in terms of the tides, everything. Emotionally, the impact on hormones is affected by the moon. So and I, I say that I've been writing about this for a long time, that Saturn is also a massively important phenomenon, and the rings of Saturn, because there was a book written some time ago now by an American called David Tolbert. It's called The Saturn Myth. And he looked at the myths regarding Saturn and the symbolism of Saturn all over the world. And if you can go, you go on the internet and you put in David Tolbert, Saturn, etc., you'll find videos, animated videos, where he's put together the way he sees it from these this research into these myths. And what it would seem is that Saturn once was the major sun of the Earth, and there was a twin sun system, the one we see now, and Saturn, which was closer. And then came this enormous cataclysm, which almost did for the Earth. And if you look at the geological and biological evidence of the Earth, that cataclysm, and indeed others too, is blatantly obvious. And Saturn disappeared into its current position. And when you look at the secret societies and religions like Judaism and Islam, the symbolism of Saturn is enormous. And same with Rome. Rome used to have a festival called Saturnalia, in which basically it mirrored our Christmas in the same period. And Saturnalia was about the worship of the god Saturn. And one of the things David Tolbert found when he was looking at all these ancient myths, literally all over the world, is that there was no mention of the rings of Saturn. As a sun, yes, but not rings. And then you go to other research where people have noticed, scientists have noticed, that the rings of Saturn are changing, and you can see pictures of what are described as electromagnetic craft that are spewing out some kind of exhaust that are actually still making the rings. And this has come from pictures from the Voyager and Cassini spacecrafts, space probes that went to Saturn. And Saturn, for me, is broadcasting a frequency. This may sound fantastic to people. I don't care if it does. It's just, I've done decades of research into this. It's broadcasting some kind of frequency. And I think it was in 2009, they found another ring that was around Saturn, only like 3.7 million miles out, a big ring. And these rings are basically broadcasting a frequency. And you can see evidence on Saturn itself of a consistent frequency, because what the Voyager and Cassini space probes pictured was something that scientists still cannot explain. It's a hexagon storm at the North Pole of Saturn. It's an extraordinary sight. This storm goes in a straight line and then goes off at an angle and then goes off at an angle to form a a hexagram, a hexagon rather, and the hexagon, the hexagram, and the cube, which are very similar in terms of geometry, are symbols of Saturn that have been symbols of Saturn since going way back. The black cube is a symbol of Saturn. Think of Mecca. Before Mohammed, the black cube was a place of worship for something like 360 gods. And then he turned the whole thing into one god, which became known as Allah. But it's a black cube. It's a symbol of Saturn. In Judaism, you have the cube. You have the Saturn god of Judaism, which is called El. And then you go to Elohim in the Bible. And for me, these Saturn rings are broadcasting a frequency which is being amplified by technology in the moon and focused upon the Earth, that is having a massive effect on the suppression of human perception and its ability to expand into greater levels of awareness. It's like a frequency prison that's constantly being bombarded. Now, what they're seeking to do is to take that frequency prison to a whole new level, and they're doing it through 4G, 5G, 6G to come. They're putting up all these towers in the towns and cities which are broadcasting these frequencies constantly. And through Elon Musk and SpaceX and increasingly Jeff Bezos, Amazon, they're putting up these thousands, and they've got permission for tens of thousands of low orbit satellites, which are basically bombarding the Earth with a electromagnetic frequency. They're saying, oh, it's internet connection and all that stuff. It's an electromagnetic frequency. And it's creating another sub-reality to impact on human perception, because once you realize that the body we see is the physical material level of it, but actually there's other levels of it which are electromagnetic fields. It's like what we call the auric field. The mind is basically the auric field and beyond. And so anything electromagnetic of the right frequency is going to impact on that field. And the body is a decoded projection of the information in that field. And thus, if you distort that electromagnetic body field, it's going to play through to what we call the physical, because they're expressions of the same information, in dis-ease, disharmony in the body, which we call illness. And this is why people that are subjected to electromagnetic fields, very powerful electromagnetic fields, get lots of diseases that other people in general don't get, like certain cancers and what have you. It's because the electromagnetic field, and this is, if you live under power lines, it's the same story, is impacting upon the electromagnetic field of the body, and thus it's destabilizing the information field from which the body is a part, and therefore the body reflects that imbalance, and we call it disease. And again, you know, you've had people around nuclear power stations where you've had these clusters of certain cancers and kids with cancer. And what you get from the authorities and the scientists, orthodox scientists, there's no evidence of a connection. No, there's no evidence of a connection because your funding depends on you not finding one, but also because you have no idea how the body works. You have no idea what the body is because you live in such a myopia that says, if you're going to be fated as an orthodox scientist and you're going to become a professor, then you've got to parrot the party line and not go into this ridiculous paranormal stuff in any way, shape, or form. And that's how they control science. They control it through funding, and they control it through career protection. And so this is why so many scientists talk complete bloody nonsense about reality.
But it's funny that the world that we live in, the elites push the material realm onto us, and it's all about whatever science can prove. But yet, behind closed doors, when you look at like the rituals they're into, the paintings, the arts, like they all seem to believe in a supernatural.
Oh, of course they do. I tell you, I've been reading loads and loads of books in the last little while about the translations of religion and the translations of the Bible and how the Bible's saying something that is very different to what we're being told. I mean, I knew about this long ago, but I've really focused on it in the last few months. And there are Christian people, some of which have spent decades as Christian ministers, who are speaking out about the fact that the translation of God in the Old Testament is a translation from a word meaning gods, which fits the whole, ancient world story. And they talk about how other people they know within Christianity that are ministers and priests and what have you, they also know that the God of the Old Testament, at least the Old Testament, is not what we're told it is and not what they're teaching it is. But they still do it because they're protecting their careers, they're protecting their income, and they're protecting their image. And, we are now at a time, well past it actually, where people have got to grow a pair and grow a backbone and say, I'm going to speak the truth that I've concluded, and the consequences will have to take care of themselves, because we cannot go on living the lies that we've been living, because look where it's got us. We're here because of that, and we don't have to be, and we don't have to go on from here in the same way. But it's going to take backbone. It's going to you've got to say things that are going to cost you careers, they're going to cost you income, and that are going to cost you prestige among your peers, and are going to get you laughed at. But, knowledge is a privilege. And, people say knowledge is power. No, it's not. No. Knowledge unused might as well be knowledge you don't have. The use of knowledge is power, not knowledge itself. And it's all right concluding certain things, but if you keep them to yourself and go on as if it's not true, then you're not using the knowledge, and therefore you might as well not have it. And so it's really a point where people are going to have to take a deep breath and start saying what they think is the situation, rather than hiding from it. And going on, living the lie that they know they're living, but are too frightened to break out of.
I've had NBA Hall of Famer basketball legend John Stockton on, and he talked about how everything he learned in life, or all of his life lessons, came from sports. Like he learned all those life lessons from playing sports, and I feel like you also did too. Because to be a high level athlete, you have to have amazing belief in yourself, and I think that's what gives you the courage to say the things you say, even if you are saying them before they're socially acceptable.
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate in that I couldn't care less what people say about me or think about me. I'm only interested in tell you what my focus is. Can I justify with the evidence to myself that what I'm saying is true? That's the only criteria I have. And once I cross that line, I'll talk publicly about it and write publicly about it. And I will never consider, oh, but if I say this, what are people going to say? That is irrelevant, because fear of consequences is fundamentally part of the prison that people live in. But the point you make about sport is very, very true. What happens in sport is that you go through the emotional roller coaster ride in a very, very concentrated way. So where you will have emotional ups and downs in everyday life that might be days apart or weeks apart, months apart, in sport, they can be minutes apart, even seconds apart. You know, I've when I was a goalkeeper, I've made great saves, and you feel good about yourself. And within 2 minutes, you've dropped a rick and given a goal away, and suddenly you've gone from this high of what you've done to this unbelievable low of making a mistake that's cost your team. And you have to deal with that. You have to become very emotionally strong and very emotionally balanced, in the sense that you enjoy the highs, yeah, and you don't like the lows, but you find an equilibrium where you have a balance of the fact that's going to happen, but also that's going to happen. That's part of what you're doing, and you learn things about yourself, and you learn things about life. I remember years and years ago, I used to write a column for an internet football website, going back a long time now. And my theme of the column was footballer's life. And you could say sporter's life. And it is amazing when you look at sport and the happenings in sport, how they mirror everyday life. And one of the things is that in a football game, at any point, you've got 22 players on the field and 50, 60, 70,000 sitting in the stand watching them. And, we have to start dealing with that, not in terms of literal football, but in terms of people realizing that 8 billion people can't be controlled by a relative handful unless the 8 billion comply and just sit there and watch. Politics is not the answer. Politics is the problem. It's people refusing to obey authority and cooperate with authority, when what authority is doing is blatantly seeking to impose more control on the population. We just don't have it. We just won't cooperate. I remember Margaret Thatcher. She was called the Iron Lady when she was Prime Minister of Britain. And she was like impregnable, right? Really? Not really. And she brought in something called the poll tax. And what the poll tax did was, long story, but it was like a local council tax on your home. And it affected middle class people and it affected working class people because of the way that it was done. And normally, when something affects working class people, poorer people, then the middle class go, oh, not my problem. The great unwashed anyway. And when something affects the middle classes, the working class goes, well, I couldn't care less about you, you bloody middle classes, deal with it, But this took that away and connected the two. And what happened is that vast numbers of people, middle class, working class, refused to pay the tax. They just wouldn't cooperate with it, wouldn't pay it. Didn't pay it myself. And what happened in the end is the tax had to be withdrawn because there was just too many people weren't paying it, and it had become too toxic for the government. And within, was it a year? She'd gone. She was thrown out by her own party. And the poll tax was massively part of that. And it just shows you in this. Another thing is during COVID, when COVID first started in England and the hoax was played, some people protested, a few, there were lockdowns, and the police picked them up easily and arrested them and charged them, breaking lockdown rules. And by the end of the COVID period, we were walking through London in protests against the lockdowns that were about 100,000 people or more. And now the police were on both sides of the road watching us go past because there was just too many people that wouldn't cooperate with the lockdown rules. Nothing they could do about it. And if only people realize that if we put down the fault lines of divide and rule and put down the fault lines of belief divides and came together against a common threat through non-cooperation en masse, the game is over. Game is over. They can only do it with our cooperation. So as we're speaking now, we're getting the reports from the video footage from Los Angeles of protests against ICE from the what people call the left in politics, and the president is bringing in the National Guard troops to deal with it, and the so-called right is cheering him on. But what we're looking at is both sides being played off against each other through something that a phrase I coined in the 1990s, problem, reaction, solution. Create a problem, then offer the solution to it. In this case, you create a problem and let's no one think that when the ICE guards and the ICE police, through this buffoon Tom Homan, go into LA, high profile, look, here we are, look, and start arresting migrants, illegal migrants, not all of which were illegal, at their places of work, etc. You're going to get a reaction from people of all places in Los Angeles. And so have no doubt that there will be agents provocateurs in among them urging them on. And that creates a problem. And then your solution is bringing in the troops, which you want to set the precedent of that. It's what he wants to do, Trump. And it's a perceptual manipulation. That's what this whole conspiracy is. And they're playing one side off against the other, and one's cheering one on. And I tell you what's kind of, well, I was going to say hilarious, but it's not. It's pathetic. When Biden and Obama and people like that were in power, and I'm not supporters of any of them, none of them, left, right, middle, none of them. But the right, which has come in and taken over the alternative media to such an extent, they were talking about freedom of speech. And they were saying that freedom of speech is being taken away, and it's communism and all that stuff. And then when they get into power, or their man gets into power, they do the opposite. When you're pulling people off the street for protesting about the mass slaughter in Gaza, then they're cheered on for doing that. Sorry, hold on a minute. I thought you were talking about freedom of speech. Oh, that was the other side, not ours. And people like Alex Jones, I mean, the veins on their neck would be bulging at the thought of the government sending the troops in if it was a Biden government or an Obama government. But he's supporting the fact that Trump's doing it. And, and what the right would do is, when something like this happened, they'd analyze it. They'd look for the agent provocateurs. They'd look for how this situation was going to be used to benefit tyranny. They'd look at that. But because their man's in power, they don't do it. And the left, that did no journalism during the Democrat years in office, they did no journalism, no investigations into the Biden administration and all the rest of it, the Obama administration. Suddenly, when Trump comes in, they start to do journalism because their side's not in power anymore. So they start to do journalism against the guy who, and it's easy to do with Trump, but against the guy who they oppose. And it's like, hold on, can we just pass that point of puberty and enter adulthood and say, when that side does it, it's wrong. You agreed? Yeah. And when that side does it, it's wrong. Are you agreed? Yeah. Well, can we just agree that when either side does it, it's frickin' wrong? And we should call it out no matter which side is doing it. Because the sides played off against each other is all part of the divide and rule that allows the few to control the many. And 9/11 was a fantastic problem reaction solution. Human-caused climate change, that hoax, is a fantastic global problem reaction solution, actually a no problem reaction solution. And what's happening in LA is a classic problem reaction solution. You use your ICE agents to trigger the reaction, and then you send the troops in saying, we've got to respond to the reaction. And it's so blatant, but those that once called it out are now cheering it on. That is how easy it is to control the perceptions of the human race. And it's got to stop. Otherwise, the conspiracy will reach its goal.
Well, they know that when people are afraid, they will just they will take on any answer that the government gives them to try to put an end to the fear and the fear mongering. And I know we're both April babies. OKC bombing happened April 19th. A lot of events happen in April, historically, but that was another one of those things. If you look at like historically, every huge event that created fear, it benefited the government in some way or another. And like you mentioned already, people don't look at, like yourself and what I do my best to try to do on a daily basis is look at information and then go wherever that information takes us. The truth is the majority of people have a conclusion and then look for information to defend that conclusion.
Exactly, spot on. And I'll just finish on this, but if we don't start reaching our conclusions and having our actions dictated by the evidence, no matter who's doing it, and the outcome, no matter who's doing it, then this whole conspiracy will reach its conclusion. And, this whole thing about connecting AI to the human brain, this is not sometime over the rainbow. They're in the process of doing it now. And they have a massive target year of 2030 for so many things to be in place. And one of the greatest ways that it's not even one of the greatest ways, it's something you have to do. If you want to have a great reset of the world, of human society, that's what we're seeing, then you have to destroy the status quo. It's essential, because while that status quo is in place and functioning, you can't replace it with something else. So you have to dismantle the status quo. And the process of dismantling it is to create chaos. Chaos is the currency of control. It's the state of flux and upheaval that takes you from one status quo to the next one that you want to bring in. And what we've had, and I predicted this since Trump came to power, second time, is chaos. Economic chaos, chaos now going on in LA, chaos about saying one thing and then withdrawing it days later and then saying it again. It's total chaos. And businesses are going, we can't plan. We don't know what's going on. What's he going to post in the morning? Chaos. This thing with Musk and Trump, chaos. It's all part of it. It's all part of this breaking up the status quo, so the Great Reset can come in. And this is the irony, that people think that that Trump is against the status quo, against the deep state. He's a vehicle of it, just like Biden was, just like Obama was, just like Boy Bush was, and his father was. It's a one-party state, but they have to give you the illusion that you're actually have political choice, so that you won't realize that actually the same force is controlling both the ones you support and the ones you don't support, whether you're left or right. And what has happened in the alternative media is that in this inner core I'm talking about, it's regressed. There was a time when it was widely accepted in the alternative media. There was no alternative media when I started out; it didn't exist. But I saw it grow, and I thought, fantastic, this is. But there was a real consensus that actually we live in one-party states. As they used to say in America when I was traveling there, it doesn't matter who gets in, it doesn't matter who you vote for, because the government still gets in. But now they've regressed into the puppet show of left and right again. And when I see people like Alex Jones and others like him saying that the Democrats are the deep state, I mean, it's a freaking head shaker. The deep state doesn't have a party. It works through all of them. And this is where we've regressed back into the puppet show. And so many people have come in from the mainstream since COVID to the alternative media, who some of them will know exactly what they're doing and why, but most of them have come in and they haven't got a bloody clue what's actually going on and why. But they do these podcasts telling people from a perspective of basically no research. How do you know that? Well, Trump said it. Well, how do you know that? Well, Elon said it. Pete Ethker said it. Well, it's probably not true then. I know but there are some great people, present company included. There's some great people in the alternative media are doing great things, and unfortunately, the algorithms have been supporting those that are the more clueless among us.
Oh yeah, I got banned off YouTube in 2021, 22, and then weirdly enough, they reinstated me recently for some weird reason, but it's still the algorithms will still suppress you. And it just, that's the thing, you can't, that's kind of the conclusion you have to come to. If you're gonna break down walls and ask difficult questions and explore interesting and sometimes, against the grain ideas, like the algorithms aren't going to benefit you. And sometimes you see the people that are just killing it and you're just like, I don't get it. Like, why are they pushing this? The algorithms are pushing this. And then people who are having real discussions are being suppressed. And, it's tough. I mean, when you see mainstream organizations talk about conspiracy theorists going into the business because they're making money, I laugh at it. I'm like, there's no money in this. It's the opposite. You have all the algorithms going against you typically.
Yeah. Well, observing, particularly since COVID, and particularly with the Trump campaign and coming into office, I've watched the people, for instance, on X, who get the massive numbers, who are talking about the conspiracy, and they're all the ones who haven't got a clue what's going on. And they're people that supported Trump, that supported Musk, and what have you. And now some of them are backtracking, trying to hold their credibility, and others are just doubling down. But they're the ones that don't know what's going on, that are pushing a certain line. So those that were pushing Trump and Musk in the election campaign, they were getting the big algorithms. People like me that were pushing back on that and saying, actually, you're being had here. I mean, I've got a following on X that's about 735,000 people, and the number of people that see what I post is tiny compared with that, and ridiculously tiny when I've been calling out Trump and Musk. And yeah, that you just have to deal with it. It's almost like a confirmation that you're over the target. If you come out of nowhere and suddenly you're getting massive numbers, well, it's worth asking a few questions about why, I think.
I completely agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with being skeptical when people come out of the blue and all of a sudden people like yourself and others who've been saying similar things for a long time. But do you think that there is, because I think about my own personal life, and I'm sure you've had very similar experiences in your own personal life where it's taken some people time to open their eyes and slowly grasp, these ideas and these worldviews. Is it possible some of these people have done it in the public eye, like a Tucker, maybe a Russell Brand, maybe these people that are like, I'm not saying that it's not possible that they're not purposely avoiding going completely down the rabbit hole, but I'm saying, is it also possible that, because I know people personally who called me a conspiracy theorist or laughed at some of the things I would discuss, and now are asking more questions, and you could tell they're curious, and now they're like, okay, I've had enough people kind of saying this, or I've had enough time to ponder on it, or publicly I've seen enough evidence that there's some substance to what you're saying, that now I'm not laughing at it, I'm entertaining it.
Yeah, I've known Russell Brand a long time. In terms of, I was on a couple of his shows way back when he was using me as a prop for his jokes, and I don't think Russell's ever seen a bandwagon he didn't want to jump on. To be honest, he's gone right through the spectrum. And he's not someone that I personally trust. I'm not saying he's doing what he's doing to manipulate. I'm saying he's clueless about what's happening, and his newfound Christianity has further limited where he will go. And then you look at Tucker Carlson. I used to get up in the morning, and when Carlson was on Fox. And the first thing I would do every morning about 6 o'clock in the morning would be to watch the Fox show that he did from the night before, because he was going further than the rest of the mainstream were going. He weren't going that far, but he was going further. And then he was fired by Fox. Now, the thing is that what this network, this global cult, especially its inner core, is brilliant at is the manipulation of perception and predicting responses en masse from whatever action they take. I think they've got computer programs that play this stuff out for them as well. And so when by this time, Musk has bought Twitter, or been allowed to buy Twitter. They didn't have to sell it to him. Free speech absolutist. Yeah, I'm sure you are, Elon. Yeah. That they fired Tucker Carlson at Fox. Now, they would have and basically how people responded was, they fired him at Fox because he's revealing too much. And when he came into the alternative media, and he had a platform with X immediately, then he got massive numbers. Oh, Carlson's doing this, Carlson's doing that. The idea that this global cult would not have known that would happen. Why would they want Tucker Carlson to go from a few million a night on Fox to, in some cases, 100 million on the alternative media? Why would they want that? I thought they were trying to shut him up. No. And I'm not saying Tucker Carlson knows what's happening either. But there are certain people who are what I would call here but no further people, who were brought into the alternative media to hold the line, to hold the barricade of here and no further. Now, some of those people, and they will be the few, will know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. But most of them won't. They're just of a certain mentality that will go so far and no further. Like, Tucker Carlson's a Christian. Okay, I'm not knocking that. None of my business. But it's a here but no further belief system, just as Russell Brand is, and to an extent, just as Candace Owens is, who's converted to the Roman Catholic Church. Staggeringly, in my view, but there you go, with its history of destroying freedom of speech. But so you've got these here but no further people, and religion is very much part of it, because, as we talked about earlier, it limits where you will go and where you won't go. And when you get people who will go where the music takes them, they'll go where the evidence takes them, they're the ones that get targeted. And as you say, the algorithms don't like us.
Isn't it? I've also seen evidence though that it seems like people who are spiritual seem or religious, it seems like they have at least during COVID I saw evidence of this where you would see, and I was raised a Catholic. I'm Portuguese, I was raised a Catholic. I kind of retaliated against that because I like to ask questions, and Catholic Church doesn't like when people ask questions, so I got
Yeah,
no. And I kind of like, hey, they're restricting my thinking and my ability to kind of see, ask questions. And but you did see, it seemed like people who believed in good, like a internal good, a God or something like that, had a easier opportunity or chance, or it was easier for them to understand that evil existed. And like a lot of the things we're talking about is like it's evil. You know, when you think about pedophilia, rituals, these, all these things that you would have to grasp the fact that evil people exist to believe these things. And you see things like I'm sure you're familiar with Adam Curry, the No Agenda show. He's been on the show, and he went from like being a atheist to slowly becoming religious because he uncovered evil. So he's like, well, if evil exists, good must exist. And do you see that relation between like maybe Sam Tripoli, who hosts this show with me, and Charlie Robinson and others, the Union of the Unwanted, he talks about how conspiracy theories always end up leading to spirituality. Would you agree with that?
Well, it depends what you call by spirituality. I don't necessarily think religion and spirituality are the same thing. You see, what you have is science and religion, and they're like never the twain shall meet, because they both stand in a camp that the other can't accept. But spirituality, not religion, spirituality, stands between the two. And it sees that spirituality and science are actually expressions of each other if you have open-minded spirituality and open-minded science, that they do actually speak the same language. And so it's the history. If you look at the history of religion, particularly the major religions, it's horrific in terms of the evil that it's done. That doesn't mean that thoroughly decent people can't express their spirituality by belief in a religion, although they're limiting themselves by the stories, in my view. But the history of religion as a vehicle for control, perceptual control and physical control, is horrific. And, when you look at the history of the Roman Church, and the Inquisitions and the horrific history of what it's done to people en masse, often, like the Cathars and the Gnostics, etc., for having a different view of reality, it's shocking. And we're seeing now religion being used, quoted by Netanyahu, to justify what's happening in Gaza. And so religion is a structure, and religion is a belief system. We don't need religion to be spiritual. We just do it. We just live it. We don't need a structure and a belief system that's on which the structure is founded to reach a point of spirituality. I don't need religion to tell me that something's right or something's wrong. I hope I can bloody see it and react to it, and not have any need for some religious structure to tell me. And any situation where you have a structure with a few on the top dictating policy and belief to the rest of the structure, well, that's the few controlling the many again. You know, why do we need these structures? We don't. Just do what you know to be right. You don't need a guy in a priest uniform to tell you what's right and wrong. You can work it out for yourself, surely. And this is what they can't cope with is billions of people who are expressing their uniqueness. This is why they want to lasso people into belief systems and structures, which can be controlled from the top. You know, I know that evil exists. You know, I've known it for a long time. You know, I've been on the case of the child abuse and the Satanism since the 1990s. I don't need a religion to tell me that, and I don't necessarily want to believe. And I do hear this from people in the alternative media that they've converted to the Roman Church because they want to be a balance against the evil. All right, we'll just be a balance against the evil. And by the way, do some research into the Roman Catholic Church, going back to Rome, that compiled the Bible. And then you might see that maybe it's not actually much of a balance against the evil that you think it is. And, you know, it's... we need to stop giving our power away to structures and belief systems and reach our own conclusions based on our own research. You know, it's not an accident that of the 8 billion people that we're supposed to have in the world now, 5.4 billion are estimated to identify as Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. Now, if you look at the Hindu belief system, the overwhelming majority, vast majority, will have been brought up in Hindu households. You look at Muslims, the overwhelming majority will be brought up in Muslim households. Same with Christians in the southern states of America, for instance. That tells you something. Because if those people had been brought up in someone else's household with a different religion, they'd be following that religion now. So it's not a choice. It's not done through questioning and conclusion. It's done through, well, that's all I've ever known. And that's what it is. We have generations programming the next generation, which then programs the next generation in limitation. In here, but no further. I won't have it. I'll never have it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's why I call the show the Ripple Effect podcast, because I truly believe in the ripple effect and that we can all make a difference. We don't have to join tribes. Don't be afraid of being outspoken, and you know, you never know how far your voice will go or your actions will go in regards to hopefully changing things for the better. But I've taken so much of your time. I know you stayed up late in the UK for me, and I really, really appreciate it. It's been an amazing conversation. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, so this has truly been an honor. Hopefully it's not our last chat. Can you let people know what's the best spots to get your books, keep up with all your latest work and so on?
Yeah, if they go to davidicke.com, they'll find me, and also iconic.com, where I do lots of documentaries, and I do a news show every week called the Doc Connector, looking at the news of the week, but putting it into another context as opposed to what we're told to believe. And my latest book's called the Reveal, which is part of it's the third in a trilogy. I call it the reality trilogy: the trap, the dream, and the reveal. And I'm almost done with another one now, which is so deep in the rabbit hole. It's amazing to me, anyway, how deep the rabbit hole goes. So that's where you can get me.
Awesome. Well, the nice thing about going down the rabbit hole is sometimes it's nice to also get out. And I see you and the kids, your son's still going to football games from time to time.
Yeah.
that. I do that with my kids.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
We're at
That's
this.
the thing, you see. That's the thing. You know, it's about awareness. Okay, we're in this world, and you can see what the world is and how it works, but you can also do everyday things as well. It's not one or the other. You know, I mean, I can go seamlessly from talking about Leicester City's latest game, we lost, um, to the nature of reality in seamlessly, because it's all the same thing to me. It's all just information, and so yeah, you can do everyday things, and people need to do that to break out of this constant focus.
I was going to
So
say,
I do struggle to do that, to be honest, because I'm so fascinated by what's happening. I'm so fascinated by what this world really is that it's a pleasure to do what I do, really, not a chore.
If you want to read more and watch more of my content, then go to the description under the video where you can buy my books. The latest one is The Roadmap, where you can get tickets for public events, and how you can subscribe to a fantastic video channel called Iconic, iconic.com.